What if you were born poor in the Middle Ages? No internet, no business degree, no rich parents, no stock market, just mud, taxes, disease, and a local lord who somehow owned the oven. If you wanted to get rich, your options were not exactly inspiring. You could risk your life in war, spend years begging a guild to let you work, walk dangerous roads selling goods, marry into a better family if luck briefly stopped hating you, or learn the one skill that could open doors most people could not even read. Because in the Middle Ages, becoming rich was possible, but it was rarely fair, and the best path upward was not strength, noble blood, or bravery. It was access. This is a ranking from the worst to the best ways a normal person could become rich in the Middle Ages. And rich did not always mean piles of gold. It could mean a workshop, steady income, land access, influence, protection, or being close enough to powerful people that poverty finally stopped breathing down your neck. So let's start with the worst option. Number 5, soldier or mercenary. The fastest way for a poor man to get rich was also the fastest way to get stabbed by someone with worse hygiene than you. War created opportunity. A soldier could earn wages, loot valuables, capture equipment, impress a noble, or join a mercenary company. In rare cases, a skilled fighter could rise in status. He might gain a horse, armor, a patron, or even land. But let's not romanticize this. Medieval warfare was not a heroic career path with benefits. It was mud, hunger, infection, bad commanders, and a very real chance of dying because someone with a flag wanted more territory. Loot could make a man rich overnight, but it could also get him executed, robbed, or buried in a field nobody remembered. Mercenaries had more freedom than ordinary soldiers, but they lived by payment. If the money stopped, loyalty became a very flexible concept. So yes, war could lift a poor man upward, but it was not exactly a retirement plan, more like a survival gamble with armor. Number 4, skilled craft or guild apprenticeship. If dying in a ditch sounded unpleasant, and bold choice by the way, a safer path was learning a trade. A boy could become an apprentice to a blacksmith, mason, brewer, weaver, carpenter, tailor, or goldsmith. After years of work, he might become a journeyman. Then, if he had enough skill, money, reputation, and patience, he could become a master. A master craftsman could own a shop, hire workers, sell valuable goods, and join a guild. That meant protection, status, and better income than most peasants could dream of. But the guild system had a catch, because naturally, humans found a way to make even shoe repair political. Guilds controlled who entered the profession. They regulated quality, prices, training, tools, and competition. Officially, this protected standards. Unofficially, it also protected the masters already making money. If you were poor, outside the right family, or lacked connections, getting in could be brutal. Still, this was one of the most realistic paths to stable wealth. Slow, restrictive, and deeply annoying, but real. Number 3, small trader or traveling merchant. Now we reach the first path with real upside. A normal person could start small, buy cheap in one village, sell higher in another, carry cloth, salt, iron tools, grain, fish, wool, beer, spices, or whatever people needed badly enough to overpay for. This was simple in theory. In practice, it meant walking terrible roads, avoiding thieves, paying tolls, dealing with local officials, surviving weather, and hoping your goods did not rot, break, sink, or get stolen by someone having a more violent business model. But trade had one huge advantage. It rewarded information. If you knew where wool was cheap, where grain was scarce, where a bridge tax could be avoided, or which town fair had hungry buyers, you had an edge. A clever trader could slowly become a merchant, then a bigger merchant, then someone who lent money, funded journeys, stored goods, and hired others to take the muddy roads for him. That is when trade became serious wealth. Not because the trader made the goods, but because he understood movement, demand, and access. In the Middle Ages, knowing where to buy cheap and sell expensive was basically a money printing spell, with more fleas. Number 2. Entering a wealthy household or marrying up. This one is less heroic, which is usually a sign it was more realistic. A poor person could rise by becoming useful to a rich household, not as a king, not as a knight, but as a trusted servant, clerk, steward, cook, guard, tutor, assistant, or estate worker. Large households were not just families, they were economic machines. They managed land, food, servants, taxes, rents, marriages, business deals, and political alliances. If you got close to that system, your life could change. A trusted servant might receive protection, better clothing, better food, tips, introductions, or even a position managing others. A clerk or estate assistant could become especially valuable. And marriage could also change everything. Not because medieval romance was so pure and magical. Please. Marriage was often property, alliance, survival, and strategy, wearing formal clothing. Marrying into a better family could bring land access, business connections, or entry into a trade network. This path depended heavily on luck and social trust. But compared to being hit with an axe for wages, it had a certain appeal. Sometimes the best way to become rich was not to own the castle. It was to become useful to the person who did. Number 1. Scribe, tax collector, estate manager, or money handler. The best realistic path upward was not the sword. It was not noble blood. It was not even trade. It was literacy. In a world where most people could not read or write, the ability to handle words and numbers was a rare superpower. A literate man could become a scribe, clerk, tax collector, estate manager, merchant assistant, legal writer, or banker's worker. And these jobs gave him something more valuable than muscle: access. Access to records, contracts, rents, debts, inventories, trade deals, land agreements, tax payments. A peasant could work hard his entire life and never see how the system functioned. But a clerk saw everything. Who owed money? Who owned land? Which merchant was rising? Which noble was broke? Where the taxes went, and where opportunity might appear. Of course, this path was not easy. Learning to read usually required access to education, church institutions, urban life, or a patron. But compared to war, it was less deadly. Compared to guilds, it could be more flexible. Compared to trade, it required less physical risk. A good estate manager could become indispensable. A tax collector could become wealthy, though probably not popular. A merchant's clerk could learn the business from inside and eventually become a trader himself. This was the closest thing medieval society had to a cheat code. Not because it made life fair, it absolutely did not. But because it let a normal person understand the machinery of wealth. And once you understand the machinery, you have a chance to climb into it. So how could a normal person get rich in the Middle Ages? Badly, slowly, dangerously, or by becoming useful to people with money. A soldier could win loot, but might not live to spend it. A craftsman could build stable wealth if the guild allowed it. A trader could rise through risk and information. A household servant or lucky marriage could open doors. But the best path was becoming someone who handled records, money, taxes, contracts, and information. Because medieval wealth was rarely just about talent, it was about access. Access to weapons, access to guilds, access to roads, access to households, access to money, and most importantly, access to knowledge. The real cheat code of the Middle Ages was not strength, it was literacy.